It is Whole Lot of Wolves, episode 23 of this 5th season. It is Paul hosting solo tonight, as there are unconfirmed reports of an illness in the Josh Buckley camp, and some agent thought that he might be angling for a move to another podcast. So we'll see how this one plays out. But I am ably assisted by Danny of Baltimore Wolves on the socials.
Good evening.
And our guest in Florida is the returning Chris Fisher.
Thank you for having me back, gentlemen.
So, attempting to jot some show notes in preparation for this week's show, I just generally didn't know where to start. So, we'll go somewhat in a reverse chronological order, sprinkling in some listener no stupid questions as we go. So, to yesterday, as of today's recording, it was Monday, the last game of the latest EPL round, and it was Chelsea 3, Wolves 1. Chris, was there actually more fight after the final whistle than during the game?
Absolutely. I mean, just the body language has been a problem dating back to Gary O'Neill's tenure early on, and now seeing it even in Vitor Pereira's tenure, it's really not just an issue for the management staff and the coaching staff there, but more so in that locker room. And then when you've got those young players, it really just sets a very bad precedent to see what's going on with Mario Lemina and Matheus Cunha right now, especially Cunha. It just sends a real issue throughout that locker room, and you can see it play out onto the pitch. And I think chemistry has a lot to do with winning in professional sports.
So we'll come back to the match, but really what we're getting at here is the immediate post-match reaction and then a little journalistic Twitter spat that involved Cunha, the Express and Stars, Liam Keane, also bringing Pereira into the mix on this in terms of his press conference. So, Chris, speaking with your background from a journalistic point of view, what's your take on all of this?
You know, I've had some run-ins before, but mostly it's at the college level, not so much professionally. And, you know, you may see some things from time to time. I know in today's society with Twitter, Facebook, all these different social media aspects, not to leave out TV as well, as you can see, and all the cameras around a stadium. It makes it very difficult for one person, whether you're a beat writer or just a general sideline reporter, to cover every aspect of the game. And I think ultimately Liam Keane probably got caught catching something last minute and just saw Matheus Cunha come off the pitch, but without him doing his little wave, which later surfaced, I saw this morning on Twitter or X. And I think that has really caught him in a not a serious issue with the fan base, but it makes them question his reporting, and you never want that as a journalist, because journalistic integrity is as good as your name, and unfortunately, that can be fleeting at times when you have episodes like this.
Now, we mentioned body language, and it might be somewhat related in that certainly performance-wise, Matheus Cunha wasn't a highlight last night. There was definitely some moments of flaying hands in the air of disappointment and so forth in terms of how the play came about and everything like that. So really the question now is, has his head been turned in regards to a move? And a little earlier this afternoon, I'll bring it up on the screen for those of you watching on YouTube, it was a tweet by the local podcaster, A Whole Lot of Wolves, respected fan, Ryan Lester. And I'll
read at the Wolves Report. We haven't got him yet.
At the Wolves Report, yeah. And I'll read it for the listeners. It's my understanding now that Cunha will likely depart Wolves this window rather than stay. Number of Premier League clubs have apparently shown an interest, and the Brazilian is apparently keen to depart. Ryan says he'd be absolutely delighted to have this one wrong, and he hopes he signs a new deal, but he is not sure that will happen. So throw that into the mix, and really, where do we go with it all, Danny?
Yeah, I mean, first, I saw one of the replies to that was that there's two apparentlys in one sentence in his second paragraph there, so that's a lot of caveating. And it should be said that Nathan Judah tweeted that Arsenal have not been in contact with Wolves yet, and later also followed up with and neither Forest, because that was another late rumor from the Daily Mail that Nuno might come and get him. But I think that for me, all this adds up to a lot of agent talk. If that's true, like both, I guess what I'm saying is both things can be true in the sense that like there is undoubtedly, interest in the like most general sense when you spend too much time on Twitter like I do, the big accounts that people like to follow for this stuff, Fabrizio Romano, whatever, have been talking about it. Like, God, he must have sent like 20 tweets about Cunha in the last like 3 days. And it just, I think that it's kind of been a perfect storm for Cunha's agent to try to put pressure where in whatever direction he wants. Maybe that pressure is just about getting the most out of this deal, and Cunha is going to sign it. And, behind the scenes, all that stuff is like basically locked up. They're just trying to get the most they can out of it. That's one scenario. But all this stuff that's happened in the last month, I think like January 5th was the last time we had like a solid update on the Cunha contract situation. Everything that's happened since then has really played into the hands of an agent, including, the sort of slow moving pace seemingly of the contract. And then, of course, all this stuff with the, I think poor performances. And then in addition, just these little spats, these little problems with like not necessarily playing at the top of his ability. We know that he was coming off of an illness also and off of an injury. So there's like kind of questions about that, but all those things could be spun into a narrative of, oh, well, my client is really thinking about something else. And none of us sitting here know, to what degree Cunha is like, looking at photoshopped images of himself wearing an Arsenal shirt or whatever, but all of this is a gold mine to an agent who is just trying to get the most for his client. So, people probably feel like I'm sitting on the fence a lot in my answer, which is to say, I don't really know. It's hard to ascribe like a solid like percentage chance. Like, will he stay or will he go? I think so much of the truth is behind the scenes, and we just won't know. And again, the Liam Keane thing is just another thing that plays into his hands in that way, where it's like, oh well, see this bad relationship he has, and things are really turning sour and whatever. And, to the extent that Liam Keane made a mistake there, I mean, I think one of the more salient ones was probably bringing it up in the press conference and getting a reaction out of Vitor Pereira, who, gave the kind of answer you'd expect. But again, that drives a wedge where now there's like a narrative that, Liam Keane is like soured he's poisoned the well, and now like there's bad blood between Cunha and Pereira. We don't know any of this stuff, but in terms of the sort of agent talk, it's all relevant,
Chris, in your opinion, would you say that Pereira wants him gone now if he's catching a few stray bullets in terms of performances and the job that he wants him to do on the pitch? Is it too much of a luxury potentially that Pereira may actually want his own guy instead?
No, I absolutely don't think so. I mean, first off, Matheus Cunha, just to Pereira's point, is a captain, whether how he's acting right now or not. He's a captain within that locker room. Secondly, he is the best player on Wolves by far. I mean, he outclasses everybody else. Joao Gomez probably gives the best effort week in, week out, but Cunha is world-class when he's out there on the pitch. A lot of times when you have run-ins like this, and then there's fodder fed in by a reporter, and then obviously with the team losing right now, it's just a perfect storm. And it's the biggest thing that I take away from it is Vitor Pereira has waited so long to be able to manage in the Premier League. And here he is with this opportunity, and he's going to be like gosh, damn. I mean, this is not really what I wanted, but I understand the role that I have to play here. And I need everybody moving in the right direction. And if the number one guy I need leading the way is our best player. So he's got to get Cunha to buy in. The problem is with Mateus Cunha, it's almost like just before the Ipswich game, somebody has been in his head because his hands going up in the air when he doesn't get the ball or somebody doesn't see him on the other side. His body language has been so bad for so long now. And look what just happened a couple of weeks ago or last week. Vitor Pereira allowed Mateus Cunha the right to be able to go back to Brazil for a little bit. You know, you don't give somebody that right if a player doesn't earn your trust and you don't trust them. And so I ultimately think, you know, the manager was caught in a very awkward question that he didn't quite know how to answer because I don't legitimately know if he saw the whole thing. Now, you guarantee later that evening, he probably went back and looked at the tape and said, okay, we got to address this in the pre-match press conference next time around because it was just a faulty question, a faulty answer, I believe, because and take this into consideration. We see after a match, win, lose, or draw, doesn't even matter. Every coach and manager goes around and high fives and says, great game to every player and every player on the other side. Does he really know what the hell Mateus Cunha was doing when he went and Cunha did his, double wave and then headed toward the tunnel? I don't think so. He may have saw it when he got back there that Cunha could have been the first one back or at least heard reports of that. But I just don't think he had a full knowledge of what the situation was when he was answering questions in the press conference. And I think ultimately his goal is to light a fire under the ass of Cunha right now, who desperately needs it because it does seem like his head's being turned. And I don't know if it's from Arsenal or all the negative talk, but all you have to do is look to a certain sect of NFL fans around the city, around the country, and you see all the time how media can really fuel bad blood between a player and an organization and a club. So I don't know if it's quite come to that point where Cunha's ready to leave. Now, is he tempted? Say Arsenal comes in, Liverpool comes in, has the opportunity to play Champions League football. I don't think he's going to deny that, especially if the money's high. But I also think that is a trigger that moving forward, we know what is going to happen to Wolves. And I think a lot right now it's leverage versus desperation in my mind. The agent for Cunha trying to leverage the situation and the desperation. How desperate is Arsenal? How desperate is Liverpool to come forward with that kind of money? Because if Cunha was on Brighton, they would pay the money. But since it's Wolves, bottom of the table, chance to be relegated, they might be able to sit back and wait till the summer and get a deal out of this. And I don't know if Liverpool and Arsenal are sitting with that kind of money to be able to do that at this point.
Yeah, I think a move in January is going to be tricky. I mean, I know this is like getting into dangerous speculation territory where you want to say like, oh, it's not going to happen. And then 2 days later, I'm going to look like an idiot. But I think it's going to be so tricky in this window for Cunha to go anywhere. First of all, obviously, Wolves' stance is going to be, absolutely not unless with a very, very respectable number. And we're talking about, 75 million or north of that. Something like that. And then you have the complication of if the player is going to be disinterested for the rest of the campaign and we're trying to stay up, well, then it might behoove us to get him out. But what teams are going to have the money to spend that kind of money in January and have like an actual need for it? You listed a couple there, and I know that like he's been linked with a few different places, but I think even the one that he makes the most sense for, Arsenal, he doesn't slot in, obviously. And so it's one of those where do Arsenal really want to spend 80 million on a player who like could come there? And like, I know Raheem Sterling's been like a real disappointment, but it could be something like that where he comes and like, oh, this is really a systems player that like is still very good technically, but like doesn't quite fit what we're doing. That's a massive risk for them. So I don't know that there's going to be a ton of pressure from the outside clubs. But like you said, the pressure is all on the side of the Cunha camp, whether it's him or his agent.
So back to the Chelsea game and weaving in a no stupid question off X. It was Chris Worsfold asking, is it really time to question the players? That game was a very similar down tools type of performance to a few under the previous coach? Are they just performing to their maximum when they feel like it? Chris, what do you think?
I think there's problems within that locker room, and I don't think it's solvable right now. There needs to be additions, and there needs to be guys off the pitch. Now, I can't sit here and name names because I'm not sitting in that locker room, but I can tell you when you see players, more than one, not put in a good effort, a very strong effort, you have the problems that you have with Mario Lemina. You have the problems you have with Mateus Cunha. You know, right now, that seems like a very cancerous locker room, and that's bleeding out onto the pitch, and it's not solved with a manager just coming in and trying to change the system and the style. It's basically a bad chemistry, and I alluded to that before, but that's ultimately how I see it, because you don't get a Joao Gomez busting his ass, and then you get the lackluster effort from Cunha. They're both Brazilian players. They're both boys, right? But it's just not there. And I'm wondering what the hell is really going on that they can, within that locker room, with that at Compton, to turn the corner. Because, you know, if you look at the table, I mean, we've got too much talent on this team to be as piss poor as we've played. And I think everything has to do with effort. And somebody's got to light a fire in their ass. And the problem is, you know, you hear the fan base, whether it's Facebook or Twitter, whatever it is, essentially say they're not playing for the badge. That's the problem when you pay these millionaires that are international players. They don't have the love that the fans do for the badge, for the club. And at times like this, when you're struggling the way you are, it's a job day in, day out. We've lost that smile, that interaction. It's like Mateus Cunha. Something's going on in his life. Mario Lemina, we know he had all those bad things happen to him last year with his family, the passing of his father, Noah coming over. It's like something off the pitch, or maybe even some of the players, the way they get along and interact with each other, the style of play has a lot to do with the mentality and the makeup of what we're seeing play out on the field. And I'll tell you, whether it was Pedro Neto did the same damn thing last year, where he got to the point of Cunha, where he was the best player on the team, and it was so noticeable. And you'd see him all the time with his hands up in the air. Like, why don't you give me the ball? We're starting to see that egotism play out with Mateus, and I don't know how they quell it right now. I honestly don't, other than Pereira trying to get them all together, team building exercise. I have no clue at this point.
I think go ahead, Paul.
I think this lends itself a little to some of the reports more recently about how we looked now as more of a feeder club destination, that you're coming in temporarily for a season or two. Like Cunha could be a prime example that he was potentially on a downward spiral, and this move has totally reinvigorated his career. And it could be the fact that these players are either looking at Wolves in that light, or they've looked previously to try and get a caliber of player because we've needed that experience when they haven't been able to go down the young and hungry route because they've needed that experienced leadership or whatever. So if ultimately they don't work out, it doesn't leave you with a lot, certainly not with the squad depth that we've got to even rotate, bring in players. I think from yesterday, I'd only really call out Joao Gomez as being everywhere, and for such a disappointing loss, he was phenomenal. But him, and then flashes of Rodrigo Gomez when he came on, and both of those players to me just exude effort and chasing and closing down and high press and all the bullshit terms that you could call. But that is it, and they're the only ones showing it. There's no one else really. And when you have that stripped away from the rest of the side, like attacking play was totally anemic yesterday. No creativity whatsoever. Players like Sarabia coming in, I just don't see it. I don't see that battle, that fight, that bottle. So when nothing's sticking up front, the midfield gets bypassed. The wing backs that should be another creative outlet, they're ostracized because they're on the back foot trying to defend. What what else is going to happen? And
Yeah.
this all to me is coming down to the fact that Pereira is saying that we're not set up to defend for large parts. We haven't got the capabilities to defend our box very well, so we need to do better with the ball and retain it. We're not even doing that. So you get wave after wave after wave of pressure. What's going to happen? A performance is going to turn into itself like it did yesterday, and that's what the most disappointing thing for me about it is.
Yeah, the players that have to fill, the larger defensive roles must be so tired after the last few games. Where it's just like you said, we just can't. It's not just about holding on to the ball. It's also about how you attack and how you, where, and when you win back the ball. But the last couple of games have just been relentless in terms of your defensive duties. So even, players who people might think, are not good enough. I think like Matt Doherty, the experiment with him at center back was a perfectly valid one, but he's not a center back. He hasn't spent the last 10 years of his life being a center back. But regardless of how good or not good he's going to be as a center back for the remainder of his career, like no one is going to be able to handle that level of pressure where you're constantly getting waves after waves after waves coming at you every single time. And I think, I like so many of these players. We've talked a lot on this podcast because we like to talk about the sort of personalities. I love a lot of the personalities on the team in terms of, the social media content, all that stuff is so perfect. Like, I think that the like when times are good, the vibes are great with the guys and all this stuff. But a lot of them, you have to admit, don't necessarily have that bottle to actually just dig us out. Something I talked about during the tough run at the beginning of the season was they have to get through this run with confidence to be able to perform in the good run. And that's not what was happening. We were, getting our confidence decimated every single week. And I'm worried about that for this stretch as well. But you think back to I know we do this a lot, like comparing to the glory days of under Nuno and being in Europe, but you think about that team, and yes, there are players there that are sort of workmanlike and average, but a lot of them had that kind of bottle. You think about a Romain Saiss, and I've said that before that I'd love to have Romain Saiss back, or at least someone with his exact personality. But it's just we had bad runs then too, but it's just we stuck them out, and we ground out draws or narrow losses. And when the fixtures turned, we still had the confidence to go out and get results. And a lot of the personalities on this team just don't necessarily have that. And feels like a lot of fair weather players right now, which is a long-winded way of saying that they're, not playing for the badge.
Oh, yeah.
Bringing that into light right now, it seems a long week, but this show's actually got to mention this past Wednesday when it was a trip to St. James's Park, which we haven't covered yet. Newcastle 3, Wolves 0, another disappointing defeat. And now I'm looking at it collectively, and to those points, Danny, it's I'd kind of be okay with these defeats, even looking like obviously even the position that we're in, and then facing these teams that are much higher up in the table, and even Forest at home. It maybe if that had been a 3-2 and we'd have put some of those chances away, we'd have been beaten by the better team, but at least we could have taken some positives from the finishing or the good performances that were sprinkled through that. But now it just seems that whole Vitor bubble has totally burst. There's no heart, there's no desire, there's no ability to grind out just a really hard-fought point at the team like Chelsea away, for example, who haven't been setting the world alight at all in recent weeks. That's gone completely. So how's that turned all of a sudden from those first 3 games? It was 7 points and positivity. We've got that defensive fragility back now. What's been the change?
Yeah, it's so hard to put your finger on. I think you kind of hit the nail on the head in some ways where some people who follow me might know that I recently did a little guest host stint down at the Drunkard United football show. You should go check them out, DU Football Show, because they were kind enough to let me do a shout out for our show. But I said some of the same things where, the Forest game and the Newcastle game, both 3-0. If those had ended 3-2, I would have, been perfectly happy with those. I thought we created enough chances. We are still looking defensively fragile, but I would have said, look, this team still got some juice. When we get to the better fixtures, it's going to be all right. But then you go to Chelsea and the effort is just not there. And the common denominator, especially across Newcastle and Chelsea, and to a certain degree at the Forest game as well, is that even though we're not giving up tons of chances, it's not like the opposition are just getting chance after chance after chance. We're actually restricting them to few chances, but the chances that we do give them are on a platter. Like often they're scoring these from, completely kind of chaotic defending where all of a sudden you're leaving, Alexander Isak, who scored in 7 straight matches, completely wide open. And it's chaos. And you can point to those specific instances, Doc moving out to Joelinton or whoever it was. There's like specific blame to be apportioned, I'm sure. But the common denominator just seems to be weirdly chaotic moments of defending, which then sort of spread into the Chelsea game as being like just a weirdly chaotic, no system game for most of the match. We had a period where we were all right, but like for the most part, just kind of no real identity, and it's very worrying.
I want to piggyback off that because just go back to the Chelsea game. And if you're watching the Peacock coverage of that game or the NBC Sports or USA Network, whatever the hell you want to call it, they literally show a clip of pregame with Wolves coaches working with the players on corners, right? And defending corners and set pieces and things of that nature. And here's Cunha, walking to get back across the line. It just goes to show that it flies in the face of what they're coaching and instilling these guys. And to me, in my mind, and I hate to say this because I hate this term, to a degree they earned it. Here's a bunch of millionaires acting like babies and being lazy asses. And that frustrates the hell out of me. And when you're talking about a club like Wolves and a fan base that is very blue collar, for somebody to just hoof it like that and just, really be lazy in that moment, that's got to piss you off. Honestly, as a season ticket holder, as a fan, it's terrible because it doesn't resonate with the people in the stands. It doesn't resonate with the people at home that bust their ass for a living. And here's this guy making all this money and then costing the team a goal on something they were literally working on in the pregame. I look at certain things. There's just, and it's a little bit different take on what Danny's saying in my mind. You look at players like Ryan Etniori this year. Look at his stats and his goal contributions and all that. But watch his defense. It's terrible. I think he's another one. He's got 1 foot out the door syndrome. I just don't. I think there is talent with this club. Unfortunately, right now, it's just not coming together. It's not melding in any way. I don't know if with this schedule, if it allows for it. I hate to be doom and gloom, but there's so many players. Like I can tell you in the preseason, I was very excited when Jorgen Strand-Larsen signed with the club. But then I saw just even in the preseason, his first touch, there's been missed opportunities. As much as people want to say Gary O'Neill really coached these players up and made them better, I really question that at this point in watching the effort and the way that these guys have matured on the pitch.
Oh, you're on mute, Paul.
It's obviously been a tumultuous week, notwithstanding that the transfer window is wide open. And again, another avenue to start pointing questions at the club somewhat in how they're configured with all of this. But it was looking like we were going to have some positive news last Friday when famed transfer journalist Fabrizio Romano announced that a deal was pending for Vittoria's midfielder Manu. So this was straight, out of left field, no talk prior to this. Some distinct excitement based on that as well. A defender turned midfielder. Some encouragement that it's the right type of profile, what we're looking for to fit the team, right? Good fee, right age, and all of that. And all of a sudden, within 2 days, hopes dashed because it's revealed by that same Romano once again that Benfica had actually come in for him and matched the deal, and he chose them instead. So I'll go for this for you, Chris, first. Do you think we were just a pawn in this and played by those agent games again, or was there something genuine in it?
I think it's Uncle George's cooking. I really do. And feeding Fab, like we alluded to earlier, these rumors, the speculation in order to drive up the amount somebody wants to go there. Plus, you have to look at it from the other point of view. I mean, if you're a player, we may love Wolves, but as we talked about also, some of these players aren't that familiar with Wolves other than the fact that they're in the Premier League, and then they question how long they're going to be there. And then what's the culture like? Because these guys all talk, whether it's on social media or phone numbers or through agents. So I honestly think he may have been close to signing with Wolves, but, this time where there's smoke, there wasn't fire, and it allowed the other teams at this point to come in and come get him. And, for Manu, he got bitched out by Bruno Lage today, which if he was there on the sideline with the Barca game. So, I just think Wolves are very susceptible right now in the fact that, you've got the Greek Pavarotti at Nottingham Forest basically cherry-picking some of our players from the past, Morgan Gibbs-White and Willie Bolly and things of that nature. No, I have not gotten any taller, Todd, by the way.
He's got the camera at a low angle.
That's right. But, I honestly think, Paul, to your point of view, we are low in the pecking order, and that all starts at the top with the Fosun ownership and Jeff Shee and Matt Hobbs. And I think these guys, even if you just listen to Vitor Pereira's, the way he has spoken at some of these press conferences, post-game, pre-game, all that kind of stuff, and the expectation that initially they wanted 2 to 3 players, then it became 1 to 2, then it became 2 to 3. I don't even think he's sure because that goal line constantly moves when Fosun and Jeff Shee are in charge.
So, moving on, it's time to preview the next fixture. And it's only a little case of Arsenal coming to town.
Yeah, no problem.
Saturday, 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Central kickoff. And I'm kind of lost on this one now. It's like, do I care? Don't I care? What is going to happen? Who's going to be here? Who's going to be wherever? Will Lamina have gone? Will Cunha be here or ill? Will Josh be back? What's going on? How can we even begin to process this? Danny, can you give us anything tangible to help preview this fixture?
Yeah, well, I was on the DU football show last night, and their co-host, who's out on paternity leave, which is why I was down there, called in because he's an Arsenal fan. And talked extensively about their center back crisis right now. It's unclear whether Saliba will be fit. They've got a number of other center backs who are either recently injured or almost back from injury. So no one's quite sure who's going to play center back. So I'll just recycle the joke that I made last night, which is that, we could score 6 or 7 goals, but Arsenal are so good at scoring from set pieces that they'll score more just on corners alone. So it'll be something like, Wolves 6, Arsenal 7, and they'll be the first team to score 7 goals off of set pieces or something.
Chris, can you even begin to look forward to Saturday, or is it just another disaster waiting to happen?
Well, 2 reasons one reason I'm looking forward to it is Wolves are playing, so that's a good thing. The disaster waiting to happen is Saturday is my birthday. So that is going to be probably a shit show unto itself. But yes, I look, it's gonna be a struggle. The fact that it's a Molyneux and how cantankerous the fan base is right now, it could be very ugly. I do look at it this way. It could be a chance for Mateus Cunha to kind of turn things around because it could be an audition for him to go to Arsenal.
Yep.
So, there's a couple of things for some of these players. They might be eyeballing that opportunity and situation. And, hopefully somebody wrangles them in the locker room and really a Joao Gomez, one of the younger players, maybe a Craig Dawson even, and saying play for pride. And I'm hoping that they'll deliver on Saturday.
We'll give you the honors as the guest to start our predictions.
Oh, Fosin out signs. There's gonna probably be a lot of them. I've got to go Arsenal, probably 4-0 right now. It's really dejecting.
Danny,
I'll stick with my earlier narrative, but I won't go so fantastical. So I'll say Wolves 3, Arsenal 4, and three of their goals get scored off of set pieces.
So for me, it's just got a loss written all over it, I think, and I think it's just how bad it's going to be. Have we got a goal in us even? I'm not sure at the moment. I've got to go. I think Wolves 1 and Arsenal 3 or 4. I think I'm going to go 3. So Wolves 1, Arsenal 3.
No Stupid Questions is brought to you by Esfuerzo Wines. Located just north of Santa Barbara, California, Esfuerzo Wines showcases passion and 3 generations of winemaking in every bottle. Whether you're toasting some Vino de Vitor or winding down after a day of work, let Esfuerzo Wines transport you to the heart of wine country with each sip. Now at esfuerzowines.com, you can use the promo code VITOR, that's VITOR, at checkout to receive a 30% discount off your order. And don't forget to try the special edition 1-pack wines to show your passion and support for Wolves with each glass. This message is intended for those of legal drinking age. Do not drink and drive. Excessive alcohol consumption may be harmful to your health. If you or someone you know is struggling with alcohol abuse, please seek help. Esfuerzo Wines reminds you to enjoy their product responsibly and in moderation.
It is our favorite part of the show, No Stupid Questions, brought to you by Esfuerzo Wines, where you can either email your questions in to hello@wholelotofwolves.com. You can X them at WLWpod or go to our Facebook page to do that as well. So the first one we're going to concentrate on tonight comes from Drew Freakerin on X. And Drew says it feels like a 2-horse race between Wolves and Ipswich for 17th, 18th. Does it seem to you like Ipswich wants it way more than Wolves, making signings or players who don't hate each other or the manager? Is this it ultimately for Wolves in the Prem? So, Chris, I'll let you pick up that one first.
So, yeah, I think right now with the effort that we've been seeing on display, Ipswich is definitely showing like they want it more. At the same token, I still think there's too much talent on Wolves to be relegated this year. I think, we've had the toughest schedule in the Premier League this season. I don't even think it's close. And after this run of games, March 6th might be our first win, and that's against Everton at home. But I am hoping we can pick up a point or two prior to that. But it's going to be definitely a big push toward the end of the season there, and it's going to be a battle and a fight. But I think the talent on Wolves' side, and especially if we can get in a signing, maybe 2 more, it'll give us a puncher's chance, just to collect that 17th spot and just barely stay up. But I like to give Wolves the edge there.
Danny, anything to add?
Yeah, I really kind of take the point of this question because I think that I don't really know what's going on at Ipswich, what the mentality is like. I only tune into their games every so often. Obviously, most recently they lost, was it 6-0 to City, which I suppose any team could really do outside of a select few. But that being said, there is something to the fact, part of my fear for the remainder of the season, I'm mostly an optimistic guy, I guess, is that a team that gets promoted like Ipswich, no matter what they think they're going to accomplish in the next season, knows that they're going to be in the trenches and fighting for whatever they get come May. And so at the very least, they're going to have that in the back of their mind that who knows, we could make something happen. And at the very least, even if we go down fighting, maybe some of us get, favorable moves when we do drop. I think there is a potential that there's a mentality, at least for some of the players at Wolves, that, like Chris said, maybe that they feel that Wolves, the squad is too good to go down, or they feel like they personally will get a move away from the championship. And I don't know. I worry that the mentality is not there, mostly because we have not seen that mentality, for any, significant stretch of time during this season. I agree with Chris. Like, I think that there's enough talent on Wolves. And I think that at least as far as we can tell, the friendships between the players seem good enough for them to at least, help each other out on the field. But they have to actually do it. So, to steal someone else's line, we might all be looking and seeing, who scores more goals, Matheus Cunha or Liam Delap. And it's not going to help if Cunha is wearing an Arsenal shirt during that time.
You have to I will give Ipswich one thing, though. They have a more passionate owner than Wolves at this point with Ed Sheeran. So who knows? Maybe he ends up splashing some cash here in the final days to try to make them a stronger club. But yeah, Danny, I agree with you. I think if Cunha goes, we're screwed, and that's c'est la vie to the Premier League for right now.
Can Wolves Records sign Ed Sheeran? How does that help our chances?
So we always ask for your stupid questions. Sometimes we miss mentioning that we can take them in the live chat as well if you're on our YouTube stream. So do contribute right now if you have got something that you want to ask. But based on what was just said, we're going to tack another one on from Drew, because he asks, even if Wolves got 95 million for Cunha this month, do you think there's enough time in the window and enough high quality players that could step in and keep Wolves up? Not even bringing up if you trust Hobbs et al. To bring in the right type of guys. I think turning into those points there is true.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll keep my answer short. I think that's why a decision needs to be made on Cunha soon. We can't let this be dragged out by the agent, because if there is a chance, and again, we don't know, maybe in the background, things are all fine. He's going to sign that contract on February 4th or whatever it is. But if there's a chance that this can get dragged out by his agent till the end of the window, that is something we cannot afford. If we're assuming that we can get in players for a substantial amount that we get for Cunha, that decision needs to be made by this weekend or something, because time is running short, and January is not a smooth time to be making signings. So needs to be made.
I think the only thing that stands out for me, if that did happen, would be some type of maybe a switch tweak in the formation somewhat, that you've got a genuine partner that you're able to sign for Strand Larsen that isn't a player that fits that 5-2-3 that looks to be persisting with. Because if it's just like for like, it's been proven on countless occasions through this season that we've not got the players for it, or they're certainly not in form to really execute when it comes to it. So if that's the case, I'd rather have a more solid 5-3-2, play 3 midfielders, have 2 forwards closer together, look for some creativity at other avenues of the park, or that's like solidify the midfield and give the wing backs more license to be that attacking threat. Maybe that spurns something, that you get a different profile of an attacker in it, like a genuine number 9 to play off Strand Larsen's shoulder somewhat, that it's maybe a smaller Diogo Jota type striker, just something different. That's the only thing that I could see that may give him some flexibility and may be a puncher's chance of trying to resurrect that season and stop them from getting relegated. But you're just going to have that narrative trotted out that January is never a good time to buy, and if they're plundered into that type of shit show of having to try and replace Cunha's output, it's a recipe for disaster, I think.
I think I would be more shocked, and we won't hear about this, but I'd be more shocked if Vitor Pereira and Matt Hobbs do not sit down with Matheus Cunha and even conference call in with his agent to find out what his feeling is ahead of time so it doesn't screw the club over. Because ultimately, when you have that tight of a window, and you guys know this, they've got a short list of players they would target in a very small amount of time, and you have to get them in right away as soon as possible. But in order to get that Cunha deal done, and the problem is you're trying to maximize your money. If Cunha tells Hobbs and she and Vitor that he wants to go, unfortunately, you have to let him go, because it's just going to be a problem continuing on the pitch, continuing on the locker room, and making this team plummet even further into a hole with the chemistry and the mentality and all that. So you got to get that hammered out now. And if they didn't have a meeting tomorrow or even today, I would absolutely be shocked.
Paul, you might be on mute.
I don't know if we can edit, so we can. I can keep going if you would like. I honestly think that Cunha, the way that you saw him, whether it's from the West Brom game last year, just the transformation that he's made overall. To me, I think that's the biggest shocking thing, Danny. I don't know if you can hear me.
I can hear you.
Yeah, he was the absolute hero for the club, and then for that transition to take place from hero to zero like that. I know it's football. I know fans can absolutely, just turn their back on a player very quickly these days, especially, with all the different elements that are around it. But I think, to me, that personality change has really been the shocking element off the pitch this season.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's sort of what you were getting at earlier, too, is that, to lose Cunha, I think, the money involved could very well be, to have, two players who are 60% as good as Cunha or 70% as good as Cunha would be a great upgrade in some ways. But it's a huge roll of the dice, especially if those players are coming in from outside of England. It's just, you don't know what's going to happen. And so you'd rather, all things being equal, you'd rather stick with the player who has performed and, is bedded into the team already than to roll the dice on some new ones.
For sure.
So that is no stupid questions. Thanks to our friends at Espresso Wines, who are bringing passion and 3 generations of winemaking going into every one of their bottles. And your bottle could come with an exclusive discount of 30% thanks to adding the coupon code Vitor, Vitor, at checkout. So as we're about to wrap up, Chris, let the listeners and our streamers know how they can connect with you.
You can find me on X and it says it right there, at Chris_Fischer, FISCHER. And I am planning for the first time, if you're watching from afar, to visit Molineux March, which we're hoping 6th, if Sky Sports doesn't move the game against Everton. So I'm really looking forward to that opportunity. I know there's a lot of listeners that Whole Lot of Wolves have over there. So hopefully we can grab a pint together and cheer on a victory that day.
Thanks to Chris. Thanks to Danny on the socials. Also, Alex producing in New York. You, the listener, and the streamer, because if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't have a show. So, if you are new to a Whole Lot of Wolves listening and want to check out our YouTube channel, I strongly encourage you to head on over, subscribe, like our content. That does a ton for boosting our exposure, and also reviews help. So on your podcast listening platform of choice, please give us all the stars, send us a comment, because that really helps too. We're going to be back next week. It's going to be Monday, where we will be reviewing everything that happens in that Arsenal game and just previewing, you know, a little derby against Aston Villa the following week. So it never rains, but it pours, doesn't it? So between now and then, I'd like to think that I'd have something witty prepared for this outro, but they're just really hammering me down this week. So, folk, just throw a snowball at someone and say, "Up the mighty wolves."
Up the wolves.